everyone. Welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast. I'm founder and CEO Jim West of TopCyberPro.com. We got a wonderful, great guest. I say it all the time. I know you probably get tired of hearing it, but this guy wears a lot of hats. Pen tester, educator, professor, instructor, keynote speaker, best-selling author. So many titles and accolades to go with this gentleman here, and we're going to have a lot to talk about in this episode. So we're not going to waste any time. So let me introduce you to Philip Wylie. Wylie like Wylie Coyote. So Philip, welcome to the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Yeah, but unlike Wile E. Coyote, I don't claim to be a super genius, but
Mad genius, huh? So we got so much to talk about because I mean you got like three podcasts, you got this best-selling book. So let's just dive in right away into the
sure.
book because I know we're going to get a little bit more of your career and your story of what brought you to today, like your career this far. We'll get to this, but let's just dive right into this book because this is an amazing book, folks, and the link for that book is going to be in the description below. So pause this video, order you a copy, just get a hold of this book because if you ever wanted a career to get started as ethical hacker, this book is called that. It is literally called The Pentester Blueprint, Starting a Career as an Ethical Hacker. So that is the perfect title for any of you out there that's considering becoming an ethical hacker. So Philip, what is the why behind this book?
Yeah, the why behind the book was in 2018. I started teaching at Dallas College. I was teaching pen testing and web app pen testing. And in 2018, I just totally changed my focus. I've always been kind of a competitive, goal-oriented person, but in 2018, when I became an adjunct instructor, I turned my focus to helping other people.
I love
And
that.
so this book was based on my first day of class lecture each semester. And so I started teaching in January 2018, and I gave this presentation to my students on what a pen tester is and the different prerequisites that you need to learn pen testing. And this was also based on information I shared with people I mentored, people want to get into pen testing because I always had people coming up, how can I become a pen tester? And I would share the resources and the certifications that were important with them. And so this just kind of evolved and kind of catapulted a little bit further once I started teaching because I was more into this, had a lot of people interested in pen testing. And so eventually it became a conference talk. So at B-Sides Dallas Fort Worth
Nice.
in November of 2018, I gave the talk for the very first time. And the really cool thing about it was in that auditorium. It was at Dallas College where I taught at. That's where they host the conference. There was like three or four people in the audience at least that listened to that presentation that went on to become pen testers. And
Nice.
one of them attending that talk signed up for my class in the spring that went on to be a really talented pen tester. She's a consultant now, was is in part of she's part of Cult of the Dead Cow and really doing awesome things, super smart. And so uh, that's kind of where the inspiration came from. And another thing that people really don't is a story that I haven't really shared much. I'm not really sure if I've shared this on a podcast, but
Okay.
really the motivation for the name, the Pentester Blueprint, is kind of a throwback to my professional career. One of my first professions was as an AutoCAD drafter.
Ah,
So we did a
okay.
lot of blueprints. So we made blueprints to show people how to construct homes, how to build devices. One of the first jobs I had was working for a company that designed electronic security for prisons. So that Pentester Blueprint name came from is kind of a throwback to my CAD drafting days.
Wow. And I mean, what perfect experience to bring into the world of pen testing when you're trying to break in a system than building systems to keep people from breaking out, right? So it's
Yeah.
kind of like he's got the ingress and egress covered from a pen tester's mentality state there. I love that. And what you really said that really speaks to my own heart is the whole coaching, mentoring, and just, providing people that light, that show them the path and how to get started in their careers. And I love that you've inspired and motivated so many people to pursue careers in cyber. And I mean, that is just tremendous right there. That speaks volumes of Philip right there, everyone. I want to talk now that you got like multiple podcast shows. I mean, I'm busy. I'm so busy just doing this one. This one podcast with Top Cyber Pro. I can't imagine doing three. So let's talk. What are the why behind having multiple podcasts?
Sure. So I've been podcasting since 2020. The very first podcast I did was with Alyssa Miller and Chloe Mistagi called the Uncommon Journey podcast. It was on ITSP Magazine. We were in that for close to a year, but if you look at my LinkedIn and see how busy I stay speaking. At that time, Alyssa and Chloe were even busier than me. And so it was really hard to schedule three people's
Hmm.
schedules along with a guest. So it got down to towards the end, the podcasts were being more spaced out. It really wasn't possible for us to continue. And ITSP Magazine said, "Hey, would you be interested in doing a podcast on your own?" So I started the Hacker Factory podcast. And so I ran that for a little over 2 years. And at the advice of some friends, I went independent and also went from just audio only to a video podcast. So that, and this is kind of what really got me inspired to do the Hacker Factory and then the Philip Wylie show has been still part of that motivation and passion to help teach others. Because each semester I would share my stories with my students, and one semester, the student said, "Hey, could you bring in some of your friends from the community? We really enjoy your stories and they're helpful, but we'd like to hear more stories from other people." So, this was kind of the motivation of my podcast. So, each episode, I will have my guests come on the Philip Wylie show and ask them to share their hacker origin stories. And so, this is one way that whether it's a beginner level podcast or a little more intermediate technology wise, then the beginners or people trying to break in will get something out of it because those stories help motivate people because sometimes whatever my guest their background is, what job they pivoted from to pen testing or other areas of security, it kind of motivates these folks because I got a really good friend of mine that's been on the Hacker Factory and the Philip Wylie show that we met back in 95 during my CAD drafting career. And so from time to time, someone will pop up and send me a message on LinkedIn and said, "Yeah, I really enjoyed your episode with Darren Freddy because I'm a CAD drafter and I just pivoted into security or I'm trying to move into security." And just those stories resonate different with different people. And also brings me up another story I like to share. And I shared this because in 2023, I got the Sands Difference Makers Award for the podcast category, the
Nice.
community award, which was decided by votes from the community. And one of the stories I shared there was at Hack SpaceCon in 2023. There was a man and his wife came to the conference to attend my workshop, and I was doing a workshop based on the Pentester Blueprint book, which I got like 30 books or something to donate like that to the attendees of the workshop. And they showed up because I was teaching the workshop. He was a construction engineer going to school to be a cybersecurity engineer. And when he stepped away, she said, "Thank you for doing your podcast. There's times that your podcast motivates him when I can't." And so this is kind of one of the things that keeps driving me to keep doing it because there's times I think about, man, I could, if I wasn't podcasting, I wouldn't be doing this tonight. I could go do this, you know, I would have to worry about this. This is a lot of extra work and it's, I'm getting sponsored now, but it's like I don't make a living off of it. And you keep thinking back, but then I keep remembering the stories of people who it's helped over
Mhm.
the years. And I've met some really cool people from it because one of my favorite things about public speaking and doing the podcast and the book is the people I get to meet through those. So I've gotten some really good stories where I've got to meet people even like in other countries and stuff because of my podcast and my book. And so the other podcast is Simply Offensive. Jerry Ozier, that runs Simply Cyber, approached me at Zero Trust World earlier this year in Orlando, Florida, which is hosted by ThreatLocker, and asked me, "Would you consider starting up the Hacker Factory podcast for Simply Cyber?" And I thought about it and I thought, yeah, I would like to start up another podcast, but I want to start clean slate, brand new podcast. And I thought, their theme there is you've got Simply Offensive and like Simply ICS. And
Mhm.
I thought Simply Offensive just fits in, but it's a funny play on words, just kind of funny, Simply Offensive. And so that's kind of where I got the title for that. My current day job, which is contract, I took over hosting their podcast when I joined there, and it's the Phosphorus IoT Security Podcast. So one of the things I've done with podcasting and public speaking is it's become part of my roles of my day jobs because I'm an offensive security evangelist, period. No matter who I'm working for, because I'm always, kind of sharing the need for offensive security. And this all started from helping beginners learn what it takes to become a pen tester. And then I realized this information I'm sharing is important to blue teamers,
Mhm.
managers, and the CISOs to understand the value of pen testing and how that works You just don't dive down into the deep nuts and bolts on how to do it or what's needed to become a pen tester. You just share the need for pen testing and all this to help educate those folks. So I've been doing evangelism since 2022, and this is just I like to share about security, and I've leveraged that. The podcasting thing and content creation has become part of my day jobs because I write blog posts for companies I've worked for. I help them get more social media followers. When I was at my first vendor back in 2022, within the first 90 days, I got them more followers on LinkedIn and Twitter, now X, as well as more visits to the conference booths and stuff. Where I'm at now, the podcast I'm hosting for them, the first 90 days, I increased their listeners by 44%.
Nice.
50% was on YouTube, 37% was on the podcast platforms. So I've been able to leverage those skills and those other passions to the day job. And this is one of the things for anyone listening, you know, do those extracurricular activities, do those hobbies. If you like content creation, do those activities because these skills can pay off for you later on. Doing evangelism and the content creation helps me make more money than I would just being a pen tester. To
Mhm.
be able to make the money that I make now, I would have to be a really super elite, highly skilled pen tester to be able to make that kind of money. And it's just kind of hard to repeat that process of making those salaries, but I've leveraged those other interests. And it's also offered me a hobby that gives me some interest outside of pen testing. And so I've been able to grow that hobby. It gives me, and anyone that's been in cybersecurity for a while, it's fun to discuss cybersecurity, but after you've done this for a while, you like to talk about other things. And that's why I'm always thrilled to meet people like yourself, Jim, that's also doing podcast or content creation. Because, when you're off camera and stuff, you can geek out about content creation,
Mhm.
cameras, audio equipment, all that stuff. So it's just kind of another hobby for me. And it just kind of keeps me motivated to continue doing what I'm doing and keep me interested in cybersecurity.
Well, I love everything you just said there. I mean, from mentoring people, having that, someone's life is going one way, they were in a talk that you were giving, and next thing you know, their trajectory's changed. Like the woman saying, "Thank you, my husband keeps getting motivated when I fail to motivate him." That's just a powerful story right there, and a testament to how much of a force factor you are in cybersecurity with everything that you do, all the content you put out. Um, when you talk about other people's stories of how, they got inspired by you and now have these great, wonderful careers in cyber. And another thing you mentioned, and I always harp to people about this, it doesn't matter how old you are, what you be, if you've been working 20 years in this one profession, I always say the water's warm in cyber, just jump in. And the term I like to use for folks is you got to just be all in, right? Once you go all in, we need you, we need your experiences. You could come from nursing, you could come from a banking background. You come from any industry, and your experience and knowledge and things that you have from there can be applied into cyber because you have a different perspective of things than I do, than Philip does. So we need all these perspectives. So I love that about your story. But speaking of stories, this is my favorite question for all my guests because you're sitting here, you're a level 99 expert here, best-selling author, successful podcast host that I hope to achieve one day myself. But what I mean is that you wasn't always level 99. You had a journey. You mentioned you start off with like, one of your previous jobs was AutoCAD engineer, but you started off somewhere where there was a day one where you said, you know what, I think I want to go into tech, IT, cyber. And what's that story, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, of your day one when you made the decision to follow this path?
Sure. One of the things I want to share too with people is because if you don't something maybe you thought you wanted to do and you don't continue down that path or you change paths, don't beat yourself up because there's better opportunities. And some stories I'd like to share here is my very first profession outside of high school was professional wrestling. I was a
What?
I was a I was a pro wrestler. I went to wrestling school. I got married in '88, and so I needed to find a more stable career. I finally come to this conclusion
If you don't
because,
mind me asking, what was your
yeah,
wrestler name? Did you have a
I
wrestler name?
just I just went under my own name. I went
Just
under Phil Wylie.
Bill
I
Wylie.
wrestled in the yeah. I
Okay.
wrestled
Was you
under I
now
wrestled
I know a little bit about wrestling because I got some friends
yeah.
that are very into it. They watch WrestleMania and all the SmackDowns, etc. And I used to be really a little bit into it when Stone Cold wrestled with The Rock and those then
I
that
know
era.
Stinkhole.
But
Yeah.
they would call like I think the good guy is the face and the bad guy is the
Yes.
heel. So was you a
Correct.
face or a heel?
I was a face, and that was short for baby face. So they
Baby
originally the full
face,
term
yeah.
was baby face. So yeah, I went to school with the Undertaker.
Oh,
Actually, I know Stone Cold Steve Austin. He was in my hometown of Denton, Texas. He was playing
yeah,
football at the
then.
University of North Texas.
Hmm.
And one of the things I have to give him kudos for is he finished his college degree. So he finished out his football career. He wanted to be wanted to be a pro wrestler. And he would talk to me and one of the other pro wrestlers in the gym. And actually, I'd put in a good word to Chris Adams that was running the wrestling school where he's at. I don't think that carried any kind of weight or anything because he was a very talented guy and went a long ways, did a great job. But one of the things I like to share about that story was I had to find things in my life changed that I had to change career trajectories.
Hmm.
And the thing is you look at things sometimes as failures, but the thing is with me and myself, so I went to school with the Undertaker. All these guys are like my age or a little bit older. They're a little bit older than I am. I'll turn 60 this month. And so to see some of those guys that continued in their 50s, close to 60 years old, being all beat up, had knee replacements, hip
Yeah.
replacements. I'm a competitive power lifter and I never had to have any of that. It's just the life that they live that they're so beat up. And you look at pro football players, the abuse they go through, their lives are shortened, especially linemen, the heavier guys that are doing a lot of the abusive type of activities, and it shortens their life. So, in a sense, I'm kind of blessed that I changed career paths.
Yep.
I never thought I'd use my mind for a living. And it's one of the things I always share because in my talks, especially my career talks, I've always shared a slide with me wrestling about my wrestling career. And also during that time, I wrestled a 750-pound bear. But what
Wow.
I share that slide is I share that if some former meathead can use their mind for a living, anyone else can. I use
Hmm.
to inspire other people. And so what's happened, you look at a lot of these other people that you look at may have failed. Hulk Hogan originally wanted to be a rock star. Well, he became a rock star in a sense through
Yeah.
sports entertainment,
Hmm.
and he probably wouldn't have been as successful. So that's one of the things in your career as you pivot, don't look back and be disappointed. Enjoy the experience you had, and it puts you on the trajectory to other things. So I ended up going to CAD school. When I went to CAD school, I had like the worst computer skills of anyone in my class. I didn't know how to type. I didn't take typing classes. And kind of just a quick mention on high school. High school, I didn't take serious enough. I graduated with a C or C minus grade point average. I took the ACT college entry exam. My entrance exam score was too low for my GPA from high school, so I was going to have to get letters of recommendation, and I really wasn't that into it. So I passed on that and went to wrestling school. But as I said, wrestling wasn't working out because I needed to make more money. I was wrestling once a week. My full-time job was working as a bouncer in a nightclub, and there's no benefits, no health insurance, nothing there. The career advancement is very limited. It's just not a good career. So I ended up going to trade school. And one of the reasons I did it was because I had actually designed some ideas for weightlifting equipment, for gym equipment. And one of the ideas I came up with before it was ever discovered or released was I came up with an idea for a weight machine for like a leg extension or leg curl machine because the opposing muscle works different. So I had this idea you create a cam or this wheel that you could change the pivot point on it. So that way
Hmm.
you can go from extending your leg to curling your leg and doing that on one machine. And you could do that with tricep extensions and bicep curls on the same machine. I was working at an equipment company and I shared that idea. And the designer there, and one of the things that we run into even back in those days are gatekeepers. He didn't want to listen to my idea. He thought,
Hmm.
why is someone going to want to get one piece of equipment that they can't that does two functions and all? But you got to look at home gyms, you got to look at hotels and office gyms. They need multi-function equipment. They're limited on space. They're limited on finances. So this years later, someone else came out with that. But I went to CAD school because I thought I'm going to go to CAD school so I can get a job designing exercise equipment. I got through CAD school and found out there's other better paying jobs than designing exercise equipment, and those jobs are very limited. So I ended up going a different path, making better money, and then I got exposed to IT. When I was working for this one company, because as I mentioned, my computer skills were so lacking. But then once I got out in the field, started learning. DOS back then,
Hmm.
learning how to use computers, learning hardware and all this stuff, taught myself how to build computers. And I saw that someone come in, this consultant was working on our systems at work, and we were making like $15 an hour. We're being billed out for double that. And this guy come in was being billed out at $50 an hour. So I thought if he's get the same percentage, he's making $10 an hour more than me. And what he's doing looks a lot more interesting. So, like I said, I taught myself how to build computers, took a Novell network
Well,
operating system
NetWare,
course.
love it.
Yeah.
Going
And
way,
so
way
then I was
back.
able to, yeah. So I was able to get into, it was during the dot-com boom. So I interviewed for my first IT job and I got it. And so that just kind of launched my IT career. After I was in IT for a while, I found out about security, got my CISSP, got the NSA's InfoSec assessment methodology certification.
Mhm.
That was in 2002. Then 2004, I moved into cybersecurity. Then in 2005, I got put on the AppSec team. We started an AppSec team. We didn't previously have one. I found out about pen testing, took some ethical hacking courses and pen testing courses, got laid off in 2012, applied for a consulting job with Verizon, consulting as a penetration tester. And I just really kind of started. And so if I look back to what I originally wanted to do, it's a lot. I mean, I'd rather be a hacker to get paid to hack than be a
Yeah.
pro wrestler because being a competitive person, one of the things I didn't like about pro wrestling is they decided who was going to win. So it
Hmm.
wasn't the best that got to win. It was staged. It was predetermined who was going to win or lose. And it's just the politics of it all. And I'm just really happy with the path I've taken because it's been more fulfilling because as I've went through my career, as I mentioned, 2018, I turned my focus to mentoring and teaching because at that point I realized the world needs teachers and mentors and coaches. And so I put my focus in that, and it's been a great life-changing experience. It's almost like compare it to catching a second wind in your career. I kind of reinvented myself, still doing the things I love to do, but doing in a way to help others and add other interesting things that I get to do in my day to day.
And so Philip went from having to listen to people write the story for him as a wrestler to now he gets to write his own story. What a beautiful theme for your career and your journey so far, right? You've now taken control of the story that you're telling and helping others through that story. That's just so powerful there. Um, there's a lot there to talk about the mentorship and teaching and education. And when you said we need more teachers, you're absolutely right. I always, when I teach people and mentor people myself, the first thing I usually tell them when they hit that moment, like, oh my goodness, I got it, I can move with this. And I tell them, hey, now you're responsible for paying it forward to all the teams you go to, the coworkers, and other people in your life. You need to also be there and be a steward for them to guide them along the path too. And so I love that story of yours. I love how education is really a huge part of your identity, and I definitely admire that. I also wrote a series that focused kids on the STEM subjects. So when you share these stories of people just changing their careers, I've helped kids go from C or below average failing to becoming honor roll students and reapproaching math differently because not all of us are number inclined, And that series won 13 awards. And one of my biggest fans, he was being bullied in school nonstop 24/7 because nowadays with social media and video games, they find you online and it's just really bad when it comes to cyberbullying. But through my books, he was able to overcome that and he actually won the state of Nevada Junior Scientist Award. And now he's actually now in cybersecurity. And so it's stories like that, like you said, it's the things that fill and feed your soul is the way I would describe it. So I see that in you, Philip, and I love that you're out there being a light for others. So with that being said, being a light for others along your journey and path, have there been managers, coworkers, colleagues, or just rock stars in the industry that you looked up to, said, I want to be like that person, or I admire this person, or this manager was a positive impact on me, this boss, this coworker? And so the goal of this question is there any folks that you want to pay homage to because they at one point in your career was a light for you?
Yes, my good friend Wirefall that founded Dallas Hackers Association. He's been a real good friend and supporter over the years, and he actually helped me get my second pen testing consulting job because I was working at this one when I was working at Verizon. There was going to be a workforce reduction, so there was a couple of us that were newer onto the team, lesser experienced, that were going to get cut, but
Yeah,
we
that
had the
happens.
opportunity to move over to another team, which was the application certification program, which basically we were doing application pen tests quarterly for these same companies if they were able to remediate the media from medium vulnerabilities up to critical. They remediate all those. They got to put the seal, secured by Verizon. So I moved over there, and one of the things that happened was I was still new in my career, and I enjoyed doing network pen testing too. And I didn't get to do that anymore. I was just purely doing application pen testing. So my good friend Wirefall that runs Dallas Hackers Association, we got to be friends, and he from meeting him from his meetup and in the community, and he recommended me to AT&T Consulting. So I went to work over there, and it was like one of the best career moves of my life because I got to do everything and anything I wanted to do. Because there,
Nice.
if you hadn't done Wi-Fi pen testing before, here, take this course, read this white paper, read this PDF, study up on it, and we'll let you do it.
Nice.
Shadow someone else.
What a
And
culture to
that's what I
work in,
did.
right?
Yes.
Perfect culture. Wonderful.
And so also another person I like to shout out to there too is Michael Klepper that's no longer there, but Michael Klepper was the practice lead for the pen test team, and he was the one that inspired us and encouraged us to do other things. And that's how I got to learn Wi-Fi pen testing because I didn't have that background before. They were going to put me on a secure SDLC review for a company. I had application experience, but I had not done an SDLC review before. And so I did a quick study up and I was able to do that. So the nice thing about that was not only did I get to learn, but I got the confidence to learn that these new things that come about doesn't take a huge stretch to learn these new things, to expand and do other things and keep my mind open to other things, other opportunities.
Yeah. Philip, you just spoke to something I tell people all the time when people come to me like, "Hey, I'm not very technically inclined," or "Oh, I start reading some stuff and it's just I think it's beyond me," because they people kind of are self-defeating. They give up before they really get started. And I remind people, I said, "Look, can you read? Can you comprehend? If you could read and comprehend, you could do cyber." And you just spoke truth to life right there with that. Just and having a culture and the right organization coming to having folks that says, "Hey, like you just said, read this paper, study up on this, and then we're going to let you get your hands dirty doing this, doing Wi-Fi scanning, doing all these different things that they exposed you to and allowed you to do." That's a great culture to be in. And folks, when it comes to that knowledge share, like Philip's out there on LinkedIn, he's got his socials, he's got his podcast, and we're going to have the links for all that, by the way. If I didn't say it earlier, we're going to have all his podcast links below. Like, subscribe, follow this man because he's again being a beacon of light for so many people. Let him be a beacon of light for you because again, the man is just an educator and content creator galore. Follow this man. And so, with that being said, the all of these things that you're putting out in the world, these positive things to help others. A lot of folks that are self-defeating, right? And you mentioned earlier, you talked about, you mentioned briefly about certifications, and I know there's a big debate in cyber where a lot of people will talk about, what's more valuable, certifications, experience, or the college degree. And I recently speed ran a WGU bachelor's. I did it in less than 15 hours. I did transfer the maximum amount of credits because I took about $3,000 worth of certifications in 21 days, so I could basically, shorten that time and guarantee I could do it in that amount of time. But in my career, I've always, I got a lot of certifications, Philip, a lot of certifications. But what I tell people is, after about 3, 4 certifications, I max out in like kind of like the pay bands and salary bands. So then people are like, well, why do you have all these certifications? Are you trying to overcompensate for something, or are you just trying to like let your ego flex your ego? I said, no, because years ago I did create my master class to help people pass exams by having, changing how they broke down questions and problems. And it's not just for tests, it's for like your career when you're trying to analyze a hack or breach. It's how you should approach it and look at your security plans and your operations and how you filter that effectively. And so I teach people this, and so it helps them in exams, it helps them in their careers. But what I usually, always come back to is that, when you're teaching people and you get that light bulb moment, I usually tell people like, hey, you only need like 2, 3 certs to get into career and have a great career. For me, I keep taking. I just took a cert 2 weeks ago. I took the new version of the CAS, which is now rebranded as Security X. That's a whole different discussion about the rebranding. I don't agree with it, but CAS was to me a great brand. I had it previously, so I took the new Security X just to keep, making sure does my master class serve these newer certs. I took the SISM also about a year ago because folks would be like, "Hey, does your stuff work for SysP, but does it also work for SISM?" And I was like, "Oh, SISM 60% of a SysP," but I took it, just to prove that and to just kind of, constantly sharpen myself. So when people say, Jim, you're a polymath, you're this, you're a multi-domain expert, I said, no, the term I prefer most is I'm a perpetual student. So this year alone, I've done over 600 hours of CE credits, and we're still mid-September as of us recording right now, because I'm constantly training, I'm constantly learning. Because to me, that's part of being all in, right? You got to be constantly reading, constantly learning, constantly ingesting information. Because again, that's what our job is, right? Is to ingest information so that we can give the information. We could be that tree that bears fruit for others, right? Because fruit trees don't eat their own fruit, right? So anyhow, but Philip, I love your journey so far. Let's talk about maybe some challenges that you faced in career, whether as a pen tester. Do you have any? I'm sure there's stories there that you could share with us about a really interesting challenge when you was maybe conducting a pen test or maybe leading a cyber range. Is there any humorous stories? Because I mean, already just the wrestling mentioned, just I didn't even know that before we started recording. So that was just super interesting. And again, folks, a testament to where no matter where you are right now, if you're watching this right now, you could be in any job and you can make the transition into cyber. I mean, I wasn't always IT cyber. Philip wasn't always, all of us out here, when you look at us like, oh, these guys are level 99, they got 20, 30 years in. We didn't always start off as level 99. We started at level zero and did the grind like everyone else. And sometimes we go this way in our career, then we change to go this way. We make laterals, we take a step back, step forward. We've done that, and so it's okay. It's part of the human, it's part of what they say, the life's journey, right? But in your case, I know I started with a question and I went down a tangent, so my apologies. It
That's
happens.
okay.
That's what happens sometimes when you're recording and no script. But let's first start with the last part of the question. Has there been a funny story where while you were wearing a pen tester hat, or any of the multiple hats you wear, that you could share with us?
Yeah, one of the funny stories, it's one of the reasons why risk acceptances are one of my biggest pet peeves. Was I was doing a pen test for this company as a consultant. It was a web application pen test, and so through that pen test, I was doing my initial scans with Burp Suite and noticed that it might be vulnerable to SQL injection. So I did
Hmm.
further testing with SQL Map to test further to see if it was truly vulnerable or not, and it was. And I was able to get command line access to that system from the internet. And once I got on a system, I was able, because they had XP command shell enabled, which is a remote connection protocol for those that don't know about that, that is something that's useful with internally. You don't want to allow that to be accessible from the internet. But I was able to get command line access, dump the password hash, and this was back in 2014. So Hashcat was probably out. I just hadn't used Hashcat yet, but I dumped the password hash, cracked it with John the Ripper in like less than 30 seconds.
Hmm.
And the password was password all lowercase and the number one.
Yeah,
And the
I believe
company
it.
filed a risk acceptance because it was a development application server, which I was able to get to from the internet. And if the rules of engagement hadn't limited me to just that server and that application, I probably could have pivoted to some of the other servers
So much more.
using the same password. The same password was probably on these other machines. And so, yeah, so they filed a risk acceptance. So it's one of the biggest pet peeves that I find, just risk acceptances in general. I think they're needed in some cases, but a risk acceptance because maybe you need more time to remediate
Oh yeah.
or something
Well,
like
I
that.
think, and without knowing the whole context of it, what it sounds like, what you just said, that you probably, if they would have let you go beyond the scope and expanded the scope for you to test other servers and systems, the reason why they risk accepted it is because it's permeated throughout their network and enterprise. So if you
Yeah.
would have found password one all over the place, opening the doors, the keys to the kingdom, if you will, with one password. And folks, there's a real life story. We see it in the news every now and then. If any of you follow any tech news about the worst easily guessed password list, and they do this about every year, they'll put out in the news media's outlets will carry it about, password 123 is still the most commonly used password, and there it is, password one, and they risk accepted it because simply because they use it everywhere. More than likely is why they risk accepted, because again, like you said, it would take too long to remediate or put in a complex password. But what's even more interesting about Philip's story, folks, is that we hear a lot today about living off the land attacks, like attackers leveraging tools that are already in the system, are already permitted to run in our environments, like PSExec and so on and so forth. He was talking about a very old school service that he was able to compromise, and it was already pre-approved and running as a remote executable service already. So he was already exploiting living off the land attacks before living off the land attacks became the new hotness, if you will. So that right there shows, Philip was already on what I say the next gen level of pen testing before where we're at today. Um, Philip, I know we could talk forever. You could share 100+ stories, but I do want to respect your time that you're giving us today. So, I do like to take this moment in the podcast. It's called my moment of levity, where all my guests, I like to ask a couple of rapid fire questions. It's just for fun to take a timeout break from all the serious tech talk and cyber talk. So, if you'll humor me, I'm going to shoot some
Sure.
questions at you. Whatever the first answer pops in your head, just blurt it out.
Okay.
Okay. This one, hey, a lot of people are torn on this. We're about to approach the holidays, and so this is going to be very, very important. Okay. Cake or pie?
Pie.
Pie. What kind of pie?
Pumpkin pie.
Hot or cold pumpkin pie?
Either way is good. I mean, one's not any better than the other because there's many Thanksgivings and Christmases that the day after for breakfast I have pumpkin pie that's been in the
All right.
refrigerator sitting out.
Next food one's coming at you fast. Is a hot dog a sandwich?
Yes.
Hot dog is a sandwich, according to Philip Wylie. All right. This one's going to split every room and every sock, every IT department. It's going to split it down the middle. Star Wars or Star Trek?
Star Wars.
Which crew of Star Wars, or which trilogy?
The very original stuff because I
The
saw
original.
Star Wars in theaters when I was a kid, and that's just, I mean, the special effects and stuff are now amazing, but the personalities and the relationships that you really don't get
Who was your
in
favorite
the
character?
newer ones. Who is my favorite character? I guess Luke Skywalker would have been my favorite character.
Right. For me, it's Yoda, that little green guy that
Okay,
was
yeah.
just so powerful and so wise. I
Yeah.
actually met the Yoda guy. He lives in, I want to say it's Saint Martin. He lives in the Caribbean, and he has the Yoda Museum. And folks, if you Google it, the Yoda Museum, it's the guy that sculpted and designed Yoda. And in his little museum, he's got a lot of Star Wars memorabilia. So if you're ever on a cruise or ever take a trip down to Saint Martin, check out the Yoda guy, Nick Mallon, I believe is his name. First name's Nick. And so brilliant guy. His wife is an actress. She had great stories about Sean Connery. Lovely couple. Oh goodness. My next question is what sorry to go off on those tangents there, Philip. What has been your most favorite book of all time that you've read, and what was the last book you've read?
My most favorite book of all times. That's a good question. One of my favorite books of all time has been the Web Application Hacker's Handbook.
Okay.
And then one of my most recent ones that I've read that I'll need to look at because it's on my desk. Uh, it was just came out recently from day zero to 0 day, a hands-on guide to vulnerability research.
Okay. So
That's the
Zero
most
Day
recent
book.
one. Yeah.
And there's been a lot of, but like Kim, obviously Zero Day by Kim Zimmerman, I believe is her last name, is inspired the Netflix show Zero Day with Robert De Niro. A lot of folks talk about Zero Day. So for folks that might be hearing that term, Philip, can you give us a quick definition of what Zero Day means?
Yeah, 0 day is a hack or an exploit that hasn't been previously discovered. And so this why these are dangerous is because your antivirus endpoint protection is not going to protect against it. Your endpoint detection systems aren't going to be able to detect it. So this is why they're dangerous. And one of the scary things are that with the past year or so, 0 days are coming out even quicker and quicker. And I think part of that's because being able to leverage AI to uh, you know produce things more quickly.
Hmm. Oh yeah. And so yeah, it's I always tell folks when it comes to vulnerability and patch management, we have that race condition, right? From when a vulnerability is discovered. And so 0 days are even before that discovery, right? So we have, the race starts when it's discovered, and then the vendor eventually will produce a patch for it. So there's a window of time. But then not every company can roll on the update, like automatic updates, because sometimes it might break other things in their organization. So they may have most mature programs will have where they could test the patching in a virtualized or sandbox environment, make sure that it doesn't break anything, and then slowly phase out and roll out. So that's even longer of a delay in the race where attackers could compromise a period of time where they can compromise through those avenues that vulnerability allows them to. So again, that race condition that we're always dealing with every day when something new is discovered, and just as I said, the advent of AI has exponentially raised the roof on how many of these exports are coming out. More stuff is seen in the wild, and again, there's a lot of organizations also doing the good fight. We got the Center for Threat Informed Defense from MITRE. We have a lot of different organizations that do threat intelligence, and that's really grown as an industry, and we love that. And like I said, we need you too in it. And so I asked a question earlier, and I'm coming back to it. You mentioned certifications where you guide people, you help them, through the few certifications they need to get started in their careers. So a lot of folks in the industry, we have this constant debate of is it the degree, the cert, the experience? And for me, I always advise people, hey, the degree is a nice to have, but you're two certs away with some good hands-on experience because experience is king, in my opinion, especially in the world of pen testing. Because I'll take someone that's got like a hack the box, a long list of trophies and awards for hack the box, and got like a lab at home. Like they can show that they have the hands-on over a couple pieces of acronyms on paper or a degree. Because to me, in pen testing, new tests now are more lab-based, where it's all labs, where you got to do to hack the I'm sorry, not hack the box, but capture the flags or a cyber range where that's your test, right? And I really do believe in stuff like offensive security, OCSP, and sorts of that do incorporate virtual testing in lab environments. But in your perspective, this is say for pen testing and anything along the lines of ethical hacking or threat intelligence, where do you see the stack here of like the cert versus experience versus degree?
Ultimately, like you said, experience is king,
Hmm.
but some companies are going to require
Yeah.
the certification.
Check the
So
box.
that's a requirement. Usually degrees aren't required for pen testing. And the thing is you need some of these things like a degree or certifications may get you the interview. So you really got to know what you're doing. So the hands-on approach, learning the hands-on stuff. One of my favorite certs is the OSCP. That's actually the one I got. I got that back in 2013 when it was still backtrack with or pen testing with Backtrack Linux before
Mhm.
Kali Linux came out that year at Black Hat and DEF CON during that time frame. But the hands-on stuff, being able to create like a portfolio, so have a GitHub of any kind of scripts that you've written, write-ups on Hack the Box, like on your Medium account or Substack or even your blog, do write-ups on the stuff, do video walkthroughs and stuff like that, just to be able, because you need something to be able to separate you from the competition. Because if someone
Yes.
else has got degrees and certs, what are you going to do to show that you're going above and beyond? Show them some of the work, be able to display uh, the work you're doing through a portfolio or other instances of way you can collect and share that information with the employer. Because one of the things when you do interview for pen test roles, usually they're going to have like an application, a web app, or an environment of vulnerable systems that you have to perform a pen test against to be considered for that job. So you really got to lean into the hands-on stuff like the CTFs and hack the box and like the offensive security certs where you're doing these hands-on practicals. It's good to know how to answer the questions, but you got to know how to perform the task. Another thing I really want everyone to make sure that you pay attention to, because even like the OSCP, some of the lab practical based exams, you can sometimes do enough to learn what you need to learn to pass those exams. And then once it's done, you forget about it. Make sure
Yeah.
you thoroughly learn that
Yeah.
subject because when you're going through the interview process, they're going to ask you questions and maybe you don't have experience or much experience at all. But if you can answer the questions on how you perform this type of attack, would you test for this type of vulnerability? If you can explain that in an interview, that's going to go a long way of helping you land the job.
100% agree. And again, experience is king always, right? Because if the better way to rephrase the question is you're about to have open heart surgery done on yourself. Do you want a guy that has a medical degree, just out of medical school with a medical degree, a guy that's certified to cut your chest open, or do you want someone that's been doing open heart surgeries for like 10 years and you're going to take experience? You're like, I want the guy with experience. Regardless of the degree and the search, but I do believe experience is king. And Philip's absolutely right. There are so many sites, and you can even what is it? Like GoDaddy's like $1, $2 for the first year registration of a domain. You can stand up a site and then start putting your content out there, or just YouTube. Get a free YouTube account, and just by doing these walkthrough videos where you've got your screen capture going, you're reinforcing what you know, right? And then you're also being a light unto others, and just like what Philip is for so many people, you become also a light, sharing your knowledge with others. Because most people say, well, there's already 100+ walkthroughs of how to do, like Netcat, or how to do John the Ripper, or how to use Kali Linux. There's 1,000+ videos. Well, guess what? Yours may be the video that helps that one person change their lives, right? That's what it's about. Like when I go speak at a conference or event somewhere, when people say, well, what if you don't have a standing room only? I'm like, it's not about the standing room only. It's about the one person that leaves knowing something more than when they sat down in that room, and that's what the focus is. It's about helping that one person. Speaking about helping people, Philip, and again, you do so much tremendous content creation. It's just astounding with your 3 podcasts, your books. I'm going to ask you in a minute if you got more books on the horizon, but let's put a pin on that one. But the question I want to ask now is, with helping others, I know a lot of us we're busy with our day jobs, and obviously you got a lot of hats you wear, podcasts you do, and content you create. But a lot of us still carve out time for these what I call causes, whether they're nonprofit charities, volunteer work, whether you give of your energy, time, or money. But what are some causes that you would like to take a moment to shine a light on? Like for me, it's like Wounded Warrior Project, the St. Jude's Cancer Research Hospital in Tennessee. Those are some causes near and dear to my heart. But what are some that are near and dear to your heart that you want to kind of what I call shine a light on and say, hey, folks, this is a great organization or volunteer or charity that is doing tremendous positive work in the world?
So some of my favorites are Women's Cyber Jitsu and Black Girls Hack. Black Girls Hack puts on the SquadCon conference.
Hmm.
I've been happy to speak there the past 3 years, and the past 2 years I've sponsored it. It's a really great cause. The Black Girls Hack had the Girls Hack Village at DEF CON, and they didn't get invited back in 2023. So they started their own conference with only 60 days to do it and pulled off something amazing.
Wow.
And they had this really cool venue that was kind of a more industrial warehouse kind of area the first 2 years. And then this year they were in the Sahara. So they're doing better each time. And I really think it's important for these groups, also RISIS,
Hmm.
uh, that they're helping the Latino and Latina populations to help some of these underrepresented groups because sometimes we take advantage because we've had these opportunities and stuff. We don't think about people that had it more difficult than we do. So one of the best things you could do is be an ally and help other folks unlike yourself. I think that's really what we need to do in this day and time because there's too much division and there's a lot more that's in common that separates us. And then things like cybersecurity and conferences are a great way to bring people together whenever you can help. And one of the things people may think about sometimes too is I'm new to this. What do I have to share? Just sharing a tool, sharing someone's podcast, a YouTube channel. This is one of the biggest things you can do. That's how I got started. I was sharing other people's content before I became an instructor. I was sharing other people's content, other people's YouTube channels, other courses and things like that, books. So anyone can share. One of the things too I'd like to share with the older folks is just because someone's new doesn't mean they don't know something that you may not. One of the biggest things I learned teaching at the college was I had students coming through trying to learn pen testing for the first time. So I learned about new tools and learning resources because they were coming through trying to learn and they discovered things. So don't ever downplay someone because their experience, even they can have zero experience, but maybe they know something or found something that you didn't.
No. Or maybe they have a background as a pro wrestler where they know how to be in front of people and perform. And that feeds into content creation, right? Because not everybody has that confidence to speak in whether in a camera or in a room full of hundreds of people watching you. You have to, deliver a performance physically. Um, one of the things you did say that I wanted the foot stomp on and that you talked about was oh goodness, my brain's going on that blank again. But you was definitely talking about people no matter what, coming in and then so forth. I'm gonna have to probably skip over because my brain just drew a blank. But the the charities that help. I actually hacker halted global CISO forum in Atlanta last year. EC Council. I met a couple of those nonprofits, and they're just tremendous in what they're doing. So that's why I was like, man, I love that you have come across them and that you've helped them grow their conference. Like you said, 60 days to run a conference and event. That's tremendous that they were able to pull that
Yes.
off. And then, man, it's just great to hear. So, with that being said, we're coming close to the end of wrapping up our time on this podcast. So, what I like to do now is I like to give all my guests what I call the final word. And I know this is kind of putting you on the spot because you did not get emailed this into the agenda question. So, folks, he did not know this is coming, but this is just you get the final word. You could talk about anything. It could be IT cyber related. It could be about wrestling. It could be about whatever you would like to talk about. The floor is yours.
Yeah, the message I'd like to put out there is just be kind to people, just be nice, give people some grace because you may be driving down the road, someone cuts you off and you flip them off. What is going to happen when this person goes home? Is he going to take it out on someone? Are they going to get angry and have a wreck? I mean, it's just sometimes just the attitude is contagious. So the same way that you act in anger against someone, they respond. And then watch those people after they go on after that. They're going to be in a bad mood. They're going to be kind of short with other folks. But also the opposite works. If you ever go somewhere, you ever notice how you open the door and hold the door from someone, and you notice how sometimes it's got a ripple effect. Other people kind of do that. So be, the world that you want to see, be the change you want to see, and just be a kind person. That is the easiest thing that you can do.
I love it. Wow, wise words spoken by a wise man. Philip, it's been a pleasure. I said you was going to have the final word, and you still will have the final word because I forgot to ask that question was, are you working on another book? Is what's next in your path? Because you got so many miles ahead of you, but what's your next, what we would say, the next 50-meter target for you?
I have a couple ideas for books that I just haven't committed to yet. But one of the big things I've got coming up is I'm starting my first conference. So I'm starting a hacker conference on March 17th next year in Plano, Texas. And the name of the conference is Cyber HackCon. And we'll be announcing the official announcement comes out on September 30th.
Okay.
And tickets will be on sale then. People can register. But the motivation for it was I go to DEF CON, Black Hat, a lot of really cool conferences, B-sides. And this year when I was at Hack Space Con, one of the things when I stepped down from my meetup group, because I started the Pwn School project, rebranded as a DEF CON group, and I stepped down from that last fall because it's just with the stuff I've got going on, and the meetup where I was hosting it was like 45 minutes away from me and kind of hard to get to. And so I just kind of handed off to the two guys who was helping me run it. And I kind of decided when I stepped down from that last fall, I thought maybe the next thing will be a conference. And so after Hack Space Con, I texted my friend, good friend Michael Farnham, that's one of the co-founders of HuSecCon, and told him, say, yeah, I think I want to start a hacker conference next year. And so he said, let's have a call. So we had a call, and he asked if I'd be interested in partnering. And so we're in the process of getting that planned out, and we'll make the official announcement on September 30th, and it will be in March 17th in Plano, Texas.
Wow. And I'm sorry, folks, we disjointed that because usually the last word comes last. But hey, I appreciate that you just shared it with us. Folks, all these links, especially the link to register for this great conference that he's kicking off, is a brilliant man with a brilliant idea to give more knowledge. And just that, at the end of the day, it's about people coming together and sharing their stories, sharing information, and that what we call a SME exchange, subject matter exchange, right? And it gets to happen at events like these. So those links for that is going to be in the description below. Just pause this video, check out the links, and there's going to be even more links. So whatever Philip's going to send me with a bunch of links and resources and so on and so forth will be all in the description below. And so Philip, we've come to an hour. I really appreciate you being so generous with your time and sharing with us your journey so far. You're a tremendous educator, tremendous content creator, podcast host, best-selling author, pen tester, all the accolades and titles. Thank you so much for being on the Top Cyber Pro podcast.
Thanks for having me. It's been an honor.